This program was made possible by a grant from the UCF College of Health and Public Affairs, which promotes excellence in undergraduate and graduate education, research, and community service in health-related professions and public affairs.
Hello everyone, welcome to For Your Health. I'm Charna Davis-Wiese. Ed Highland is out on assignment. On today's show, helping adults with autism move into the workplace. And also today, with constant headlines about increased autism rates, many young parents wonder if their child is displaying signs. There are things you can watch out for. That story's just ahead.
I'm Alicia Callanan Mandigo. UCF is participating in a landmark national study on childhood health that will incorporate partnerships from all over Orange County. I'll have that story.
Autism was first identified in 1943. At that time, it was not considered common. Today, there are more children with autism than there are children with cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Given those rates, parents may want to make sure they know what to look out for.
Little Trevor Schwarzkopf loves to swing just like any other 4-year-old. But Trevor isn't like every other little boy. He has autism.
Trevor couldn't hold his own head up till he was 10 months old.
Just months after Trevor was born, his mother knew something was wrong. She saw the signs early.
The children just don't seem to be developing normally.
Dr. Jennifer Elder says the younger the child, the harder the diagnosis. Early warning signs include if your 1-year-old doesn't babble or coo. If they don't gesture by 12 months, that's a sign. They should say single words by 16 months and 2-word phrases by 24 months. Some children don't show signs as a baby.
There's another group that start to develop normally, and for some reason, it's like the light switch is turned off.
That's what happened to 13-year-old David. He was 3 when his parents noticed something wrong.
I noticed him saying certain words, and then he wasn't saying them anymore.
Love that.
That's one of the primary warning signs, loss of language. More red flags? If the child doesn't respond to their name and can't explain what they want.
Rather than asking the parent for something, we'll take the parent's hand and use it like a tool to get something.
Other signs, if your child can't follow directions, if they walk on their toes, avoid eye contact, and don't smile when smiled at.
Go with their gut feelings. If they feel like something's wrong, get the help.
It can make a world of difference. This is Marty Salt reporting.
Early diagnosis has always been considered crucial when dealing with autism, and research right now is pushing the envelope on just how early that diagnosis can come. Some studies are even looking into whether there are clues to autism coming from the womb. Chances are you know somebody who has a child with autism. These are kids that will eventually come of age and hopefully enter the workforce. It's something you might not have considered, but today's guest, Dr. Chad Nye, has considered it. He joins us from UCF's College of Health and Public Affairs to discuss adults with autism and their entry into the workplace. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You know, we always hear the rates are on, it's on the increase, the rates are on the increase, but isn't there a possibility that it's being noticed now?
Sure, I think that's, most people agree that that's at least an element that goes into the increased rates. The question that keeps driving it, though, is that the rates seem to be going up at much faster than you'd expect, even given the increased ability we have to make accurate identifications early on. And there are some parts of the country, for example, that have shown rates far above even that of the 101 and 150 that we usually accept. So not really sure why that is. Some folks attribute it to environmental factors, some to biological, neurochemical, biochemical. We really don't know what's driving those rates. And I have to say too, there are also some epidemiologists who have argued that the rates aren't really going up to the magnitude we say, that if we look at them historically, that's not the case, but that's probably more people would disagree with that than agree, but it's one of those issues that's just tough to get a handle on.
And when you think about it, you and I have a mutual friend who has a child with autism who is now getting ready to graduate high school, and she tells me that 17, 18 years ago, or 15 years ago, nobody had any clue what was going on with him. It was something that wasn't even considered by a pediatrician, and because she was a PhD in in this particular field. She had an idea that something was up and had to find it out herself.
Yeah, that's a fairly common story for parents with children that are in young adults or even older adults. It's probably only been in the last 15 years where we've really gotten a focus on the characteristics. In 1994, they changed the definition, they broadened the definition to include higher functioning behaviors under the autism spectrum disorder banner, and so that's helped to increase the numbers that we recognize as falling under the spectrum.
Right, as you mentioned, the whole autism spectrum disorders, there's more than just autism.
Right.
And Asperger's, which we hear about just because it becomes almost a plot line
Right.
on TV shows.
Right.
But that is so stereotypical.
Yes.
And not necessarily the only thing there is.
Right. Right. The Rain Man syndrome is how I usually refer to it. If you ask somebody who doesn't work in the field, what do you know about autism? Well, isn't it Rain Man? Isn't that autism? And I have to say, yeah, it is, but we have a saying that I think applies really well here, that if you've seen one person with autism, you've seen one person with autism.
Right.
They're different in every characteristic, and that you may think is stereotypical, they're not. Certainly there are behaviors that our general public would recognize as reflecting an autism-like or an autism behavior syndrome, but in fact that's not a consistent pattern of behavior across individuals with autism.
In the reading I've been doing, it sometimes there are cases where the person is functioning in a classroom or in a work situation, and the idea from someone else, that the person that deals with them, the other person who doesn't have autism or Asperger's or one of the spectrum disorders, is they're difficult or they're different or they're not reacting in the way they should.
Right.
And that may be the only way that they can notice any difference in some of these people.
Right, and we have, as a culture, society, we have a pretty wide band of acceptance of behavior. So you've got to really move beyond the sort of limits of acceptability to move into categories that sort of draw attention to themselves, and you'd say that person's not just different, they've really got a serious problem of disability classification. Right. And there are individuals with the diagnosis of autism that sort of fall within those parameters. We might think they're a little unusual or eccentric, or it's a good example is we have a student, or we did a student that was at the university. One day in class, he stood up in class while the professor's lecturing and says, "We covered that yesterday. Can we move on to something else?" So, that's probably not acceptable in that context, but then that's what probably a lot of us think a lot of times in class.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe that problem with social interaction actually helped him to cut to the chase.
That's right.
It was actually probably beneficial, and all the kids are probably going, yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Right.
Who knows, maybe he just thought, I'm just going to get up and say, I'll blame it on the autism.
Right.
Now we talk about that when they're children, they have a place to go every day, hopefully. They have a school, they have their job is to be a kid and learn. But then they come of age, like our friend's child.
Right.
And it's become a big world with a lot of places for people. So the hope is that with your research, there are more places for young adults with autism to join the workplace. What are you finding out looking at it?
Well, we just started a project that has several components to it. A couple of them have to do with trying to first see what research has been done. One of the things that we find regularly in our work is that there's a lot of research that's been done that we haven't tapped into or haven't accumulated and sort of made an assessment of what we really know. So the first couple of years, one of the projects is to do that, to identify the research, collect it together, and then systematically go about analyzing that to try to find out what works. So there are some programs that probably will give us good clues about how to address adult issues. And in this case, we're really interested in employment. And by employment, we mean full-fledged, real jobs, not make-work jobs, that pay as would a person without disability. And those jobs are certainly doable by individuals with autism. And part of what we're trying to identify are the environments where that can take place, the job types, as well as the business facilities, locations, and so forth. We're also trying to identify programs on a national basis that have demonstrated success in employment for individuals with autism. And then lastly, we're putting together, toward the end of the project, which is a 5-year project, we'll put together case studies to try to describe what was a success and what was not a success for those individuals that were able to be placed and were able to either be successful and maintain the employment or not.
One of the things I was thinking about, we did a show on informatics and the mandate that has come across that we have to put all this medical data onto computers. And now that I think about it, I know a number of people who have children with autism, and what this dad told me is that you put that child in front of a computer and no one can do what that child can do.
Right.
That might be a really good career for someone like this man's child.
That's true. And
entering all that data.
Yeah, sometimes you think of trying to do away with the deviancy, with the behaviors that we would identify as being the characteristic of autism. But in fact, what we really probably ought to be doing is improving the competency. That is, we can, I can carry the lunchbox of Superman to work. I can get away with it because I'm competent in certain areas. Competency will override that. People will think he's a little odd, a little unusual, but okay, let him carry his lunchbox. But if you're not competent in the work, then the deviancy gets in the way of the perception of the individual's skills and abilities. So one of the things we're working at is trying to identify the competencies that are needed in order to be successful in the work environment. We can deal with the deviancy, so to speak, or the display of behaviors that get in the way. We can deal with those fairly readily, actually, either directly with the individual or work with the employer to modify the environment so that we get a structure that the person can function in, which isn't all that different from what we would do if you didn't have a disability.
Right.
We would make the environment workable. So,
right.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. We'll be right back. We're back. We're talking with Dr. Chad Nye. We're talking about the goal of getting people with autism into the workplace. And as you were just mentioning, we tailor career choices to our normal, for the lack of a better word, functioning children to fit their personality and what would work for them. So there's probably no reason why we can't find a way to tailor the workplace or the career choice to somebody with autism as well.
Exactly. And it isn't that individuals with autism sometimes have aspirations that you might question sort of the reality of it, but then so do we all.
So do we.
So, if you want to be a musician, you need to get in an environment to learn to be a musician. Of course, in my case, learning to be a musician says you don't want to be that. It doesn't take too much experience to make that piece of information work for you. As we would encourage a student to test the waters, see what it's like to be a speech-language pathologist, shadow a speech therapist for a week, go to the hospital and watch what goes on. Information helps us make decisions about choices, and the individual with autism is in the same sort of category. They need experience to be able to make those decisions. Now, we may have to help guide those decisions and help guide those experiences, but it's not any different.
We tell our children that it's okay when you fail because you learn from it and grow from it.
Right.
Nietzsche.
Right.
It makes us stronger.
Yeah.
But sometimes do you think that we all tend to protect people with disabilities from failure when it probably could help them become stronger as well?
Right. It is a learning process, and whether you have autism or not, it is a lifespan learning process.
And in reality, they probably have bigger challenges every day than any of us will ever face.
That's right.
Let's talk about CARD.
Okay.
It's a favorite thing because
Right.
of my friend Mary.
Right.
Let's tell everybody a little bit about it.
Okay. Well, CARD stands for the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. It's a state-funded service center that serves 7 counties in the UCF area. There are 7 centers in the state. They're all connected to or affiliated with the university. It was a program founded by parents, actually, as a grassroots organization where they went to the legislature and said, we need some sort of system within the state agencies to help deal with our children. It was begun in 1993, was the first a mandate for that purpose. So the 7 centers over the years have been affiliated with the universities, the idea being there's resources at the university that can help to drive and provide some quality support for families. It's sort of expanded beyond that over the years. It is a center designed to provide technical support, information, training, and generally anyone who has any involvement with an individual with autism, we can at least be available as a resource. So for example, we do workshops we do about 100 to 150 workshops a year with parents on everything from toilet training to estate planning. We have programs with law enforcement. We have situations where 5th graders are handcuffed and taken off in a squad car, and the law enforcement doesn't know how to deal with that, and we're trying to sort of educate them about the issues related to that. We have churches contact us, or they have Sunday school programs and Sunday school teachers that they have kids with autism in those programs, and we provide opportunity to train for behavior management in those kind of situations. In addition, we spend quite a bit of time working with schools and teachers, curriculum, principals in shaping the educational program for kids in school. We also serve adults. And it's basically a lifespan service for everything from daily living to work and employment and leisure activities even. So it's a kind of a full service sort of resource. We don't provide therapies, interventions on long term. So for example, we wouldn't have long-term counseling for parents or a behavior modification training program that would last for extended periods of time, or speech therapy, physical therapy, that kind of thing. But we will help parents and others find those resources that are available to meet those kinds of needs as they need them.
It's life skills.
Life skills. At least that's the goal we're moving toward for those kids as they move through the educational system, and after they reach 21 into 22, they're out of the system. So now they become need access to the public services at large, and so life skills are critical.
And the truth is it's mind-boggling how many people with autism there are, even in this community.
Yeah, we serve. We have over 4,500 on our registry alone. That is families with individuals who have indicated that they have a diagnosis for their child or loved one that is eligible for service. There are some 17,000 plus identified in the state of Florida. The numbers are pretty staggering when you look at what's been done in the past, in particular, and the services that are provided today.
And there's no reason to hide these people away.
No.
They can be very productive. I looked up, I Googled, and I looked up to see some famous people. Where are they? Including Vernon Smith, who's the Nobel laureate in economics. The actress Daryl Hannah from Splash was diagnosed with what they called borderline autism. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, but you've heard of his things. Satoshi Tajiri, who created Pokemon. Ah. So there's no reason why people with autism can't, at least some of them, can go into the workforce and even do extraordinary things.
Absolutely. We have a gentleman that's on our constituency who's a PhD in mathematics.
I would think.
Which is a little scary right there.
Yeah, but, that's scarier than autism to me.
Yeah.
That's very smart to be a PhD in mathematics. Right. Obviously, somebody gave him the encouragement to go out and do that.
Right.
Dr. Chadney, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for doing what you do and helping make this a better place for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. UCF is slated to take part in a first-of-its-kind national study on childhood health. It's a remarkable multidisciplinary effort that will not only involve numerous community partnerships, but also collaborations with other universities, making this a truly groundbreaking project. Alicia Callanan-Mandigo has details.
Nancy and Dr. Wan, you had asked for 10 segments, so we divided it into 10 segments. You gave us...
This is an historic meeting of sorts. These folks are from the city of Orlando, Orange County, the health department, and the University of Central Florida. They're here to map birth rates in various Central Florida communities because our area is taking part in a first-of-its-kind nationwide study on children's health.
The main thrust is to understand the interplay between genetics and environmental factors. As you probably know, lots of diseases not just simply affected by environmental hazards, but potentially genetic component will be involved. So without knowing the genetic contribution and environmental contribution, you cannot tease out the causality very well. So this study really gave you the first opportunity to identify the complexity of the etiology that might impact upon the distribution of illnesses present in the children population.
The study is a huge undertaking. It will track the births of specific groups of Orange County children and follow those children over a span of 20 years. To do this will mean collaborations never seen before. UCF will be working with 4 other Florida universities. Area hospitals will be collaborating, and so will all kinds of community leaders.
I think what's really magnificent about all of this is we're bringing the community together. People are excited and enthused and are volunteering their expertise to do things like get the segmentation portion of the study put together so that the sampling methodology is really where it needs to be. But also it's these same people who will introduce us to community leaders, because part of the activities that we're going to be responsible for through the Center for Community Partnerships is to engage each of the neighborhoods in the different locales that we're going to be using for sampling in helping us identify the moms and communicate with their neighbors about what we're doing and why it's so important, because recruitment for this study is critical.
The people in this meeting are experts on Orange County's neighborhoods. They know the details on which neighborhoods are predominantly ethnic or elderly or rapidly growing.
So what we tried to do here, okay.
Yeah, it's quite a diverse area.
Yeah. Let me quick clarification. What is the east boundary of 2?
It is
Cimarron.
Okay.
Wow.
Which is a very...
This study will be important not only for the nation's children, but for the University of Central Florida and Orange County, because it's going to put us on the map like never before.
That's why I call it not only landmark from the national perspective, but from our local perspectives as well, to show that the collaborative effort can make the UCF known to the world that we do such a good job to be able to identify the complexity of the health disorder in province.
The study may also answer questions that have been plaguing agencies like the Orange County Health Department for decades.
I could already see possibilities of a tremendous amount of data that can be gathered from this longitudinal study that will help us better the health of our community. As he was talking about preconceptual health, immediately what came to mind was the large number of infant mortality in the Black community. And 30 years of research later, we haven't been able to pinpoint what is the reason for that, what is causing that. Even when you adjust for economic factors, for age, for socioeconomic educational levels, we still have a large rate of infant mortality in the Black community, and perhaps this study will give us an insight into what is causing that.
And I have to say that one of the most significantly growing areas for the Hispanic population is right.
The goal of the study is to understand what affects childhood health, but as researchers work through this process, it's likely they'll gain a better understanding of our community and just how powerful multiple collaborations can be. I'm Alicia Callanan-Mandigo for Your Health.
The study is expected to include over 105 counties nationwide. It'll yield vital information that shows how the interplay between genetic and environmental factors can influence pregnancy outcomes and childhood health. That's all for us today. I'm Charna Davis-Wiese. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time on For Your Health.